You're listening to Heal Through Humor, hosted by yours truly, Talia Bombola. I'm a licensed therapist on a mission to help others learn about themselves and laugh along the way. All right, hello and welcome to another episode of Heal Through Humor, the live podcast. I am very excited for today's guest. Her name is Tessa Mac, /dating coach, and we have had a lot of fun being able to chat behind the scenes to get prepared for this episode. It is going to be a truly dynamic conversation. I can't wait. And if you have any questions, as always, that we will be able to answer, just let us know. We can answer them live. You can comment in after this is posted on both of our pages. You can also comment in there. And now we have to wait for the Instagram technology to do its thing and have Tessa join. This is always my favorite part of these live podcasts, is the awkward waiting period. So if you have any specifics about dating or relationships, keep those in mind, message them in as needed, and we will see if this works. All right. Let the games begin. There's always a bit of a delay. Oh no. Okay, you can't be unable to join. We have to have this work. Let's see. There it is. It worked.
Yay!
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. I'm excited for today's chat.
So am I.
Where do you want to start? I'd love for you to introduce yourself so people can get to know you more.
I guess that would be a good thing to do, right? Yes. So, hi everyone. My name's Tessa Mac. I am a dating coach and I'm from LA. I've lived all over the world, including Italy, London, Bali, New York, and etc. So I've seen a lot of people, met a lot of people, and I've worked with over 1,000 clients, and I basically help people who are looking for meaningful connections in dating or a relationship basically get out of their own way and stop hating their life and actually meeting the kinds of people they want to meet so that can happen. Sounds simple, but it's not.
No, it is not. And it's very similar to what I do. And that's something we were able to connect on a while ago when we were able to meet. And it's remarkable how many people could benefit from this, but have either understandably shame or stigma or lack of knowledge that this is even existing as a service for people to be able to take advantage of.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Like some people are like, I didn't even know that was a thing. It's like, well, it definitely needs to be. That's for sure.
We know it is, and I hope other people after this especially know that it is.
I hope so too. That is a good goal to aspire to.
Yes. So where do you think we should begin today?
Where do I think we should begin today? That's a So we talked about so many things. I'm like, wow.
What about the type of clients that you work with? I know we've talked about it, but let's explore that a bit more.
Yeah, so I work with, it tends to be like 75% men, 25% women, but it's not really about like the demographics so much as what the person, where their mindset is and kind of what they're looking for. So it doesn't really much matter in that way. And I basically work with, they tend to be millennials, but I'd say like 27 to like 45 years old. So that's actually not all millennials.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically people who are single, looking for relationships, or just to maybe they got out of a toxic relationship recently, or in the pandemic where they were alone the whole time and basically want to get out there and either find a relationship or remember what it's like to actually talk to people, and then eventually one day if something meaningful comes up, have a relationship. But basically just not people looking for hookups, like people who want something with substance.
Yes.
Is pretty much, and then having a mindset that's open and ready to change and get uncomfortable and transform their life, because stuff gets really deep, stuff gets weird sometimes, stuff gets uncomfortable, but yes. It's also fun. I'm really a big fan of fun. It's one of my core values, and I think that people think it's this frivolous thing, but it's actually very important. And the more fun we can have, the easier it is to get through all this stuff.
Yes, and the ability to have I think is an important tenet of at least this podcast and of my life. That's one of my core values. And I think we're not doing as much as we could be, and not like in a shame productivity way, but like we could benefit a lot more from having a different sense of humor and the ability to laugh at ourselves while we're which can be remarkably uncomfortable because clients come in for one thing and then we uncover, well, did you know that that's related to all these? And they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to go there. I just want this. I'm like, well, we can't have this without.
Right. It's like, exactly. It's like, it's the simplest things. Like someone is like, I want an amazing dating profile. And I'm like, right. So like, what kind of, partner are you looking for?
Yeah.
And even though they've like so badly want a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever, they're like, wait, I don't know. And then I'm like, well, okay, you never thought about it. And then that's a whole rabbit hole. Cause sometimes people are like, well, I never really dated. So how do I even know that? And it's like these little simple things go and turn into a whole rabbit hole. And then even making a profile, the person has to kind of, it's like marketing. You kind of have to, you have to know what the product is. You have to know who the ideal client is. And in order to make a good marketing campaign, like in order to make an ad that stops you scrolling on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, it has to actually speak to you.
Yes.
And to do that, you have to know who you're targeting. Like if I was just like, yeah, I'm a coach who like helps people do stuff, like I wouldn't have clients, right? Like, even though I don't, in order to help someone with dating, the funny thing is it's on the surface, it's about dating, but it's really not, as we've discussed. It's like, a lot of underlying behavior patterns, trauma, all of this stuff.
Yes.
And it, actually impacts the rest of your life in ways you probably didn't realize or prioritize as much because your love life is the most emotionally vulnerable. So you think it's a dating problem, but typically it's not, other than, like lack of experience in taking action, putting yourself out there, and a little bit of strategy. But the thing, strategy is, if you have a great strategy, but you don't know what the product is, it's just not going to work. People will buy it once and be like, I don't know what this is. This isn't what I thought it was, basically.
Yes. And that's, I think, true of people working with dating coaches, mentors, etc., as well as of what it's like going on a date with somebody. It's like, this isn't at all like your profile was, or you actually don't do the things that I thought you were interested in long term. As you go to the farmer's market and you take the product home, right? You go on the date and you're like, oh, like we're seeing each other. And then you start to see the real them and you're like, oh, there's like some directionlessness here. There's a lack of motivation. There's stuff that the other person hasn't quite worked on yet. And that's actually often what is ending the relationship sooner. It's not about, I didn't have hot enough pictures or I don't have a six pack. Like,
right.
It transcends the external oftentimes and is a lot more about either the amount of, whether that's a positive or a negative gain, how much inner work have you done and how prepared are you to really date and find a relationship if they're looking for somebody to spend, a large part or the rest of their life with.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it's much easier to blame your shitty photos than it is to actually look at those deep
And it's my childhood. Yes.
It's like my deepest, darkest trauma that I wanted to forget. Okay.
I mean, that thing I've been hiding in like the back closet? No, don't make me take it out, please. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, yeah, like even something that simple, if you want to really, it's really about focusing on the source of the problem, not the symptom, because if you focus on the symptom, like it's just going to keep happening. Like if you have, if you have a brain tumor and you're taking Advil for your headache, like you won't have a headache for the day, but it's not actually helping.
No, you still have the tumor.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what are some obstacles typically that you either see clients come in with and or help them through in the beginning?
I think the two biggest ones, one of them is probably pretty obvious, which is lack of confidence, and, like, it's like, people don't think that they're interesting. And I was actually having a good discussion with one of my former philosophy professors, because I studied philosophy for 6 years. I have a master's in it. I like nerdy stuff. And so we're still very good friends today. And we were talking about like what makes someone interesting. There's actually 2 points I want to make. I need to remember that. Okay, so the original point I wanted to make was that being interesting, it's funny, it's actually about feeling interesting, which is actually different. Because if you feel, if someone came up, there's certain things that if someone comes up to you on the street and they're like, like, honestly, I think I'm an interesting person. It's not affected by other people. So if someone was like, you're boring, I'm like, okay, it wouldn't affect me. Just like there's other stuff that, might really trigger me. But if you said it, like to someone else, like I have a fear of public speaking. So if someone like said I don't know, like I gave a speech and someone like was really mean about it, I would be very hurt. But then someone who's super confident in it, they'd be like, yeah, whatever, I don't care, right?
Their opinion.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about actually feeling interesting. And I think a lot of the reason people don't feel interesting is they either maybe aren't going out of their room. That's a big one. They're not having experiences. And but like, and they also don't realize that a lot of the like personal things they're going through in life actually are interesting. Like if you
Yes.
just like if someone just messaged you and said like how's your day, like you don't actually have to directly answer that question. Like people also, this is like another
Yeah.
tangent, like branch of the tree basically. I'm like kind of going off in a
Yeah.
direction where people think like A plus B equals C and you have to answer the actual question people ask you, but you can actually talk about whatever you want. Like if someone says how's your day, you can go on like a whole rant about like the last month and like all this crazy stuff you've been through, or like you're having a really hard time with this and like you had this experience, and like you can just go on a whole thing, and people actually really like that, believe it or not.
Hmm.
If you're just, it's basically about giving people, you do have to frame it in a way where it doesn't sound like you're like super victim-y and stuff.
Like dumping it on. That's a lot. I actually just wanted to know how your day was. We went very deep too soon. Yeah.
Right. You could say something like, I'm like working on my business right now and it's a lot's coming up for me. Like I want to raise my prices, but my like, it's funny because like you don't realize when you start a business, like, and you have to raise your prices, then you have to actually sell to people. This is like a very common thing people have that like work online, that I hear a lot, and something I went through a lot in the past, where it's like it's actually like a sense of self-worth and like being able to sit there and actually charge people a lot of money for a service, because it's in like if the product you're selling is good, it's you need to actually you need to actually offer in a way that is deserving of the thing.
Yes.
And so you could go on something like that, right? For example, and the person might relate to it in some way. So even though that wasn't your day, you could, if you did nothing that day but sit in your underwear and eat chocolate and cry, like you don't have to. You can, you can talk about something exciting, and like you can tell people what the highlight of your week was. People really enjoy doing that. That's a really good question to ask instead of how was your day. So
yeah.
that's
being more specific and directive of a dynamic conversation that lessens the likelihood the person gives a one-word response or doesn't respond at all. As we all know, the biggest frustration when you're first getting to know someone, whether it's romantic or platonic, it's the small talk. That's a lot of what I hear my clients who are dating. Either they're in a dating relationship, haven't moved to engagement/marriage, or they're dating to try and find a person to get to those milestones with. I'm so sick of the small talk. If I have to ask one more person what their favorite color is, I'm going to quit dating forever. Why don't we be more have some ingenuity and ask different questions and really get to know the person? And there's a really great app, the Gottman card deck app. They have an entire deck. It's on your phone. You can download it for free.
Yeah, question cards are really great. Yeah. I have like over there, I have like 5 different brands of them.
They're so helpful because you don't feel like there's an awkward silence, and sometimes just one is all you have to ask, and then you go on your own
and
exactly. The conversation starts from there. Plus you're outsourcing the anxiety to a mutual object, so it's like, oh, it wasn't me, it was the card deck. And so it kind of lets you off the hook, and that awkwardness of, oh, I'm not interesting at all. When asked prompted questions, many people are interesting, but we're not that interesting.
There's so many good points. That's the thing. It's like people are, honestly, I mean, not everyone is maybe interesting the way you want or up to your whatever standard, but like if you actually prompt people the right way, like you'll actually find basically anyone, I'm going to say like 99% of people's voice are interesting.
Yes.
It's just you're not asking the right questions, and like asking great questions is like one of the most important skills you can have in life, and dating included.
So true.
And like one thing what makes a good question, at least with like in the initial dating stages, I would say, is one that it's open-ended but specific. So what I mean by that is, if you're in a class and the teacher's like, write an essay on whatever topic you want, you can turn it in whenever. You're just like, what the hell, right? You're like, what would I do? Decision paralysis, right?
No deadline at all. We're just hanging out.
Yeah. And so it's like, but if they're like, I want 500 words on like the cultural impact of COVID in like the US, like one thing, or like in the state of California, you can like pick whatever you want. You can pick dating, you can pick comics, you can pick like social justice, whatever, right?
Right.
You have a direction. So it's like everyone in the class will have a different answer because it's an open-ended question, but it's very specific. So it gives people constraints they can actually work with.
Yes, and I also want to add in when we ask somebody a question, especially like how when we talk just up, the male female dynamics are so different that women, when we want to know more, we will be very inquisitive and ask multiple questions. That can be quite inundating for men who are
Guys
not.
do it too. It's basically when they, the job interviewer and on a date.
Yes, right. Yeah, I think there's a way to do it where we give them time to answer and accurately reflect and then accept them for who they are, because so many times people
Yeah.
think that, oh, well, they said this, but they really meant this. No, like, why are you going in on their behalf and making up a story about it? Maybe, obviously, we know the reason is to fit their narrative better. And let me just judge here. I'm just going to go there. Oh, there's my perfect person, right? I'm ignoring all these red flags and totally threw out the answers I didn't like, but this one's going to work. I think really at face value, if you ask interesting questions, you're going to get more, hopefully, in-depth answers that give you a better foundation to potentially start a relationship or say, yeah, this isn't going to work. We don't have the same core values. We don't do the same things for fun. You never want to leave your room, right? This is the first time you've left in 6 months and I go out all the time. Like, we're already not meshing well from the start.
Right.
Yeah.
It's good too. I actually realized this recently. A lot of people, when they ask questions, they don't think about like why they're asking. Like, what is it that you actually want to know? So if you ask someone's favorite color, it's like,
why do you want to know?
Why? Yeah, it's like if you actually know why you're asking the question, that's great. It's like, yeah, it occurred to me recently that that's just not a thing. It's not necessary. It's not. I made an assumption that that's a thing because I it's my job. So I know why I'm asking them. It's something I'm just trained to do at this point.
Right.
That's natural, but it's one of those things where when you've been doing it for so long, you forget that it's not obvious, right?
Yes, it's not obvious to everyone. And I think the phrase that common sense is not all that common is very true, because we're not, I like to joke, hopefully you're not dating somebody who was raised by the same people you were, right? So if that's the foundation, we can't expect them to know exactly what we know or operate exactly the way we operate. And being curious beginning stages of dating, not only with your own internal self, with whomever you are interacting with, is a really surefire way to lead to not only you being more authentic, ideally, when you meet somebody, it's a more authentic relationship.
Exactly. And one piece I wanted to add to the question thing, so what makes a good question besides the open-ended specific is another piece you can add is one that elicits a positive emotion. So
Yeah.
So like, for example, I've gotten like a lot of compliments on this question. I collect questions, by the way. I literally have
I have them in
I have thousands of questions. Like,
yeah.
I ask like random polls all the time in surveys and stuff, like, what makes someone how do you know someone is trustworthy? And then like crowdsource the top 5 answers and share stuff like that. So I'm into questions. And so on a date or something, or in person, instead of asking like, what do, you can ask something like, what's the most fun thing about your life?
Yes.
Because, people, and if someone doesn't have anything, then there's your answer. But you learn a lot of random stuff. Like one person was like, oh, well, actually, I just got a dog and I'm like training my dog. And actually the psychology of that is like really fascinating. Went on this whole like passionate rant about it. Yeah. And someone's like, I'm in a handstand class. And like, you just learn all this like random stuff that actually tells you a lot. And like in these stories, you actually learn about people's values, what they care about, without having to literally say like, I'm a nice person or something like that, right?
List me your top 5 core values. It's like, yeah, that's one approach. And I do think for some, getting right to the point, it does help. But being able to ask questions that you get to see their spirit, you get to see how they show up in their life, and you get to know what it feels like to be curious about the other person, and ideally have them do the same thing or a similar thing in return.
Exactly. And actually, so this actually goes into the second part of what makes someone interesting, like, because we went on that branch over here, the other one. I always get back to the point, just lots of rabbit holes along the way.
We take a cruise before we land the plane.
That's kind of my style. I basically go on tons of rabbit holes, but I do get back to the point. There is a point to all of it. It's not actually random. Is so the other thing is, if you take a second and think about like, who are, gut reaction, who's the most interesting person you've ever met, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, like, if someone genuinely has a different answer, or their answer doesn't include this, it's like, I will give you $1 million. Like, it's literally, I have not seen an exception to this. whatever your answer is, I promise you it includes enthusiasm, passion, excitement. Like if I just started spending the next hour telling you with like the utmost enthusiasm about why it's amazing to watch grass grow, and I really meant it, like you would be here for it, right?
Yeah.
It's like the most boring thing I can ever think of, right? Watching grass grow. But like if someone like really like sells it to you and like goes on in this passionate rant with all these great details, you're like, wow, like
yes.
watching grass grow.
Yes. And you might also want to be doing the same thing, right? Because you're curious, because if it had that impact on them, what impact might it have on you? And you make a great point about that second kind of definition line of what makes somebody interesting. Do they have a recognition and an awareness of what they are passionate about, what they are skilled at in life? Are they living out that passion, skill / interest? And that does set a really good foundation for a conversation to be dynamic and enigmatic. It's, oh, I really am hanging on to their every word. And I will add that typically you learn something from the experience, or you have a change in your own emotional, reaction, because they're so passionate about it.
Right. It changes your energy. Is literally contagious. This is like a scientifically proven thing. There's studies about it. And yeah, like, and so both of the points, this one being, having enthusiasm, which I honestly think is the most underrated personality trait that people don't actually realize. It's actually proven. People will basically, someone with like a lot of enthusiasm or who's enjoyable to be around in that way, like will get hired over someone who's better at the job.
For sure.
It's actually proven. I mean, maybe not Elon Musk or someone who's like really like, we need to get to
that's an exception. Those are exceptions.
Yeah. And yeah, the other point of like what makes someone interesting, and it actually being about feeling interesting rather than being interesting. Those both ultimately are about you being enthusiastic about something in your life and actually believing that if you share that, people will care. Because a lot of people think that their interests are boring, and I'm like, well, do you think they're boring? Like,
but why are they your interests if they're so boring, right?
Yeah, and like people, and this also goes back to your point about the question cards, and like why they're one reason they're very powerful is because people need permission for fucking everything. So if you prompt someone and like this whole like I hate small talk, I'm not kidding. Like I never have small talk. Like in the rare moment I do them, I actually notice. I'm like, oh, this is odd. Right? So it's like, I tell you just because it's my life, like you don't ever have to have it. It's literally completely doable. You just have to give yourself permission, or maybe here, I dub thee permission to ask people deeper questions. I'm giving it to you.
Hear it always. Take it with you for life. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, if you actually go there, like people, because a lot of people just lack the know or the ability. So it's like, in you being that kind of person where you like ask interesting questions, it actually will teach people how to do it and inspire them. Like in you being this best version of yourself and asking great questions, it will actually like raise their vibration basically, and give them the ability to do it as well.
Absolutely. I think we can all benefit from doing more work on our own self-concept, because that is the foundation of how we move through the world. How I view myself dictates how I treat myself, and how I treat myself dictates how other people treat me as well. Yeah. And so you improve and ask yourself more interesting, inquisitive questions and rewrite your narrative about yourself and your life, you attract a different caliber of person. And like you're sharing, energy is contagious. We would want to be around someone who supports our new growth and who we view ourselves as, rather than sticking around typically people who don't let you be your authentic self.
Exactly. There were so many good points in there. I'm like, oof, goody. Like,
copious notes.
I literally had to write them down so I wouldn't forget. So yeah, the first one is, this is huge. So there's something called the 6 levels of change. If you want to look into it more, you can look up 6 levels of change. There's an article by Neil Strauss that's really good, or you can look up 6 levels of change, NLP. And basically what it is there's like a pyramid of changes we can make. So there's environment, behaviors, capabilities, beliefs, identity, and spirit. So and this is like one of the most common things I see, and I'm not excluding myself at all, but when I realized this, it was like a huge, like, holy shit moment, where a lot of the times what happens is, so with these levels, I wish I could show a photo, but I can't. Basically, the bottom of the pyramid environment, if you change your environment, you don't necessarily change anything else. So anything, the more higher you go on the pyramid, the more it trickles down to the rest. If you change your identity or beliefs, you change your capabilities, your skills, or like it. And so, but it's not the other way around. Like, you can't, if you change your behavior, it doesn't mean you've changed your beliefs. So, and that's why a lot of people, when they try to act like someone they're not and it doesn't work, it's like because internally they're the same person, but they're just acting different. So it doesn't actually work that well. So that, and so the really like this huge epiphany I had recently was a lot of people, including me, basically what happens is they have a belief about their identity that's actually about a behavior or a capability. So say you're at work and you didn't get the best performance review and now you hate yourself and don't feel like worthy and like all this stuff. But it's actually like, or maybe you're just need to take a course on a certain skill. Like, and
why do we have to take it there?
Like, it's actually, it's like people basically get triggered because it's like they have a belief that it's about their character, about who they are as a person, but really about how they're acting or what their skill level at something.
Yes.
And when you realize that, it's not actually that bad at all. It's like you can just learn something or act a little different. I mean, it's, of course, easier said than done, but it's the more higher you go in the pyramid, the harder it is to change, or the more challenging. It doesn't mean it's not possible, but it's just a totally different ball game,
Yes, and we had a question. Somebody asked, does the environment they find themselves in influence their identity?
So that's actually an interesting question because I've lived all over the world, like 3 different continents for many, many years. And so it's funny because although technically your environment doesn't change your identity or beliefs or all the other stuff, I have like an opposing view basically. And even just moving houses, like if I was sitting here in my like childhood bedroom, it would, even though you might not care, it affects me. Like, yes. It makes me feel like, I'm in like a old past version of myself, and I do tell people, I'm like, if you really want to make a change, like say you want to like quit smoking and you have all these like triggers everywhere, or like, you just had a breakup and everywhere you go, you're reminded of your ex and it's really hard to change. Honestly, I can tell you, because I've lived all over the place, like the easiest way to make like a massive change, like the easiest way is honestly to change your environment. So I don't fully agree with the environment part, but I also understand the point that technically like moving, me walking outside right now and continuing this live, like is not going to change my identity. Right. So it depends on looking at that. But yeah, so life hack, if you really need to change something, it's not working, just move or go somewhere for a month, honestly.
Yeah. Or create, for those who are not maybe able to take it to that extent and move, can you, for an hour, can you switch environment, sitting in a different place in your room, right? Can you get a different perspective of the same room if you have to be there?
Yes.
And this experience can be your, like, if you imagine your brain or like kind of your inner world, like that movie Inside Out, the kids movie, where you see the different, feelings interacting. Imagine the landscape of your brain and try and take yourself mentally to a different environment. Clear anything in your actual environment that is giving you discomfort or doesn't need to be there anymore, because it's like, okay, this represents my past life. This isn't who I really am anymore. I'm going to remove this, or I'm going to remove myself and go for a walk or what have you.
And yeah, I know it's definitely not easy to just move, but it's basically what the point is basically that, it's like if everywhere you look, you're associating it with something, to just, to change your state, you actually can change your environment. So other than that, though, the 6 levels thing is, I would say, is compatible with my views. And also, you can create like a space in your home, like a sacred space. I like in Bali, when I was living in Bali, like I had a balcony with like an altar and some like nice crystals and stuff like that. And like, I would only go there for like when I wanted to feel specific thing. I even do it with music. I literally like train myself like a dog. Like sometimes it's like I like if like there's a really good moment, I purposely will like play a specific song so that if I need it in a not great moment, I've heard it enough times during
Positive association. Yes.
play it then. And yeah, like I actually intentionally do stuff like that. So I like I'm always kind of like conditioning my subconscious mind in odd ways like that. It works really well.
It does. And I really strive to empower people when I work with them, or even in, you know, the content that we put out, if people feel inspired by it, to take your own life into your own hands as much as you're able to, whether it's your actual capabilities, the limitations you have with where you're at the time and other roles and tasks that you have to accomplish, but really taking a look at, okay, where can I empower myself? Is this empowering me and my authentic self if I choose this versus this? If I stay in this environment versus this environment? If I know this thing or this job would be better for me, but I'm not going there, being curious why we might not be making some of those changes. But at the end of the day, empowering yourself to realize, even if you're not able to make the change yet, what are the changes that would benefit you, and how could you become more of your authentic self and change that narrative that you have, and do the subconscious reprogramming and conditioning, right? Like for Pharrell Williams' song Happy, the one from Despicable Me, I love that song. I have so many positive associations with it, that if I need a mood boost, or if I celebrate already being in a good mood, boom, I'll pop that song on. I might pop on some Michael Bublé. Like, I have a playlist of feel good vibes is what it's called. And so like you, I know that I can go songs to have a positive experience.
Yeah, and I actually, this is another good little hack, is I have a folder in my phone where it's basically like a lot of like nice things clients have said, or if someone, you know, like if my boyfriend says something really sweet, or just anything that makes me like feel really good, I just put in this folder. Like, you know, when I have pictures of my clients with like their, you know, girlfriend and boyfriend, or boyfriend that they really love, they're so happy about, that I've like been with them through this whole thing. It's like that, like, just makes my life so, it's just like the best thing. And like stuff like that, where I just, when I'm feeling down, it really does work. And then it's like, you don't actually realize how awesome you are. It's almost like, instead of having a resume, you should just have, it's basically a resume, although some of it can be visual, of just all the reasons like you're awesome, like all the proof, right? All your experiences, all of the things you've done. And like, doesn't mean you need to be like on Forbes accomplishing things. It means it's just like these little moments. You're like, I actually really helped that person, and their gratitude like really meant a lot to me. And like, look, reminding yourself of that is really powerful.
Yes. And I don't think we're, as a society, necessarily encouraged to do so. Sometimes it can seem egotistical, braggadocious, whatever it's, you know, labeled, but it's a negative thing to view yourself in a positive light. I think we can come a long way, again, empowering ourselves to realize these are my accomplishments. I enjoy taking ownership of them. I am proud of myself for fill in the blank versus I pride myself on. I think there's some nuance there and subtle difference. What are you proud of yourself for? And if that list is not as long as you might like it to be, or think yourself to be capable of making it, how can we empower you to have more in your life that you're proud of, and that it doesn't matter necessarily, or it's not contingent on other people viewing that and also being proud of you? How can we instill that internally within an individual self?
Exactly. And I just had a client who basically said something just like that, of like, putting myself out there and, discussing all these things I'm interested in. It's like, that feels braggy. It feels bad. And it's like, you were not born with this belief. The only fears or insecurities that humans are actually born with are heights and loud noises. So anything else you're afraid of, it's because of, whether it's a big T trauma or a lowercase trauma. So like, whether someone called you stupid when you were 4 and you internalized it, or whether something really bad happened. Yes. Like all of the stuff, like I skateboard, and like, I like fell on my elbow once, and like, I'm a beginner, and like before that I was way more fearless. And then like since then I've noticed, I'm like, wow, because some of the stuff that you're actually doing isn't, I don't do anything like that crazy because I'm not there yet, but one day I'm like, it's not actually literally that hard to go down something like a couple feet. Unless you're like very old or something, or handicapped or something, right, it's actually not physically hard.
Correct.
What's hard is here, right? It's not actually about what I'm literally doing. It's because like now I know I and like hurt my elbow, which is totally fine. Like it's not like it wasn't, it sucked for like a bit, but like, but yet it affects me like every time I do it.
Yeah.
And it's insane. And it's like getting through that is a practice. Like it's not really about this, whatever sport you're doing, or, it's not about these things. The actual things are not hard. What you're actually afraid of is that split second. You're literally afraid of 1 second, if
Right.
not, between you and that thing. And like once you get through that 1 second, it's fine.
Yes, it's being able to transcend or move past the story that you have either before trying a similar behavior that you have in the past that you have a negative association with, or the apprehension and all the perceived fear that you're telling yourself or perpetuating by continuing that when you're trying something new. I think both are worth examining and really taking a look at, okay, what am I truly afraid of? Right. And if at the core, it's I'm going to die or be left alone, right, in a more relationship basis, I'm thinking of for my clients, there are valid fears of I don't want to be alone forever. I don't think use it. True, very valid. No one wants to be alone forever. So how can we work towards that not being the automatic go-to that you believe if you do this, that's going to happen, right? If I stand up for myself, I'll be alone. If I do this, like, can we have some more before it becomes black or white thinking and live in the gray, and then you re-narrate for your life, oh, I used to be afraid of skateboarding. I had a valid reason because I got hurt when I was little. The more I practiced and the more opportunity I gave my brain to replace that initial memory with positive experience, I don't fear it anymore.
Exactly. It's like you have to basically, that's a really good point. It's like people have like one bad experience or a couple, but they associate it with like it's like, if you say like, men are evil, and you're like, well, how many men were actually evil to you? Like literally count. Like I actually want you to sit here and count, like make a list and tell me the number. And they're like 3 or 4. I'm like, okay, so there's like 4 guys that are assholes. Great, amazing, right? It's like
everyone in the world.
No, it just means that a couple are, like, on one hand, less than one hand's worth. You can honestly say are definitely like, not good people or something. Great.
Sure. Good match. And
it's just not actually as big a deal.
Right. And if they're saying, well, every single one, and like, let's say we analyze it, and it is true that more often than not, their interactions are really extremely negative. This is, again, that kind of that.
It's like, who's the connecting thread of all of it?
Common denominator, it is you. And it's not to disempower anyone. It is to really have them take an honest look and go, oh, yeah, why is this my pattern? Let me be curious about the pattern enough to change it, rather than just be like, well, it is the way it is. That's just how every guy is going to be terrible to me. So guess that's fate. It's like, that can be a choice.
It's like, if said that, unless they change their belief, I'm like, yeah, for sure. If that's absolute, because if you really believe that, I promise you,
but it's going to happen.
Which also means if you believe something else with that much conviction, it's also true. And this is like one of those things that maybe in a laboratory hasn't been proven yet, but I promise it's like an objective truth. It's like you attract what you subconsciously are looking for, because the thing, you don't actually notice the other kinds of people. So if it's like if you suddenly bought a red car and you have you have a black car, but now you have a red one, and you go outside and you're like, holy shit, there's so many red cars. It's not like they weren't there before. It's just now on a subconscious level, you're prioritizing red cars. So suddenly they're everywhere. So it's like, attracting toxic, emotionally unavailable people, say. So it's like if you're on your subconscious radar is like looking for that, you'll keep finding it, and then you'll ask yourself, why is this happening to me?
Well, where are you putting your energy and focus? And it starts clearly when you're trying to find a relationship, and it continues throughout your relationship. Are you only looking at the things your partner failed at or you didn't do for you, usually without asking the other person? And so there's this like unrealistic expectation, like, how could you not have read my mind? But there's this checklist.
That's a huge one. I'm like, people assume that people can read their minds.
Love does not give you telepathy. I put that on a post.
That's such a good quote. Oh my god.
Like, it does not make telepathic.
That's amazing.
Unless you were raised in the same household with someone, which ideally no, because that's incestual, you're not going to have the same experience. And we even see this in sibling differences. You could have a wildly different perception and perspective, even if you were raised in the same house.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, I was just with my mom and her two sisters, and I was just and my grandma. And I'm like, wow, this is just so fascinating. Like, they could not be more different. Like, it's like the most different personalities in the whole world.
Yes, and we can understand that in this way, but then again, we're blinded, and this chemical cocktail comes up when we're in love or we really have strong feelings for a person romantically. These deferences that we give to other people, like, oh, let me give them the benefit of the doubt, let me ask them what they like, throw them out the window, and this, Disney delusion comes in of just like, they'll know exactly what I want without me having to ask, and if they don't, it means they don't love me, and because they don't love me, it's like, let's slow it down and unwind.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Beliefs. And then a lot of my clients sit there and go, wait, so it was me. Oh, but then they feel good.
It's liberating because you can actually control this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Change your relationship not only by like choosing to not be in it anymore. That's one choice of change. You can change it by your perception. I'm going to, for a week, only look for the positive things my partner is doing. I'm going to ignore when they missed to take out the trash. I'm going to ignore that they got the wrong kind of milk. I'm going to focus on they got the milk that was on the grocery list. I'm going to focus on they replaced the bag after I took the trash out. Your perception is your reality. You can have a much more positive relationship if you're not constantly comparing your partner to this unrealistic expectation or to what you would do. That's the number one recipe for contempt.
Oh my God, yes.
Well, I do that. Or you want to date yourself?
Yeah, it's like, and I thought you didn't want to die alone.
It looks like that might be the trajectory if we keep having this pattern play out. So let's make some changes.
That is epic. And
yeah,
another thing about this that is so important is I know that people hear this all the time, but it took me a while. It took a while for it to like really land. It's like the words you use to talk about yourself to the world or about anyone or inside in your head equal your reality. And this is literally proven with science. There was a study, there's a TED Talk where they were studying like people who were likely to get schizophrenia, because that's something that I think comes up around 21. Like there's a specific age that it tends to manifest. And it was like people that were a couple of years younger. And they basically made this algorithm that, using like all the written words in English of all time, like no joke, is like an insane thing. Like, like literally the whole database of written words to use to, and then so first they applied literal words to what these people were saying for a couple of years, and that like didn't give them anything useful. And this is a study done by scientists. This is like a real credible thing. Look it up. And then they were like, okay, well the literal words isn't telling us anything. So then they thought about like, what about how they're saying it, right? And then I don't know how they did this, but they made an algorithm that basically focused on how people were saying the words they were saying. And I'm not joking, this is like maybe the one time in history of a scientific study that it had 100% accuracy of
wow,
like predicting if someone would become schizophrenic or not. And that just proves it's like the way that you are speaking about yourself, how you're talking about yourself, because words have energy. So if I say the word shame or if I say the word gratitude, it has a different weight to it. One of them probably feels much lighter and better. One of them is like the most
you don't want it,
dense, like awful emotion. It's like the energy of the words you're using to talk about yourself and others equals your reality. So like if you are always talking shit about people, if you're gossiping, if you're saying all these mean things about people, that this is a one like rule of the subconscious mind is it takes everything literally and personally. So even if you're talking about someone else, but you're always using these like negatively charged, it thinks you're talking about you.
Yes.
And so it's like you need to really be like super careful with how you communicate with the world and yourself, because it literally with 100% accuracy equals your future.
I love you for saying that and bringing this up, because it's such an important topic to talk about, how your own narrative works on literally everything that you view and interact with, as well as going deep down. And I remember it was my doctoral family systems class, and I remember being like a tall building in LA, and the professors talking about these lockstep intergenerational systems that happen, and they showed 2 to 3 generations worth of a really invalidating, cold, lack of emotional validation environment creates the breeding ground essentially for schizophrenia. So when we talk about genes get activated or this break with reality, etc., mixed with this study that you're saying, it really goes to show how truly powerful your environment is, who is in your environment, what was your environmental upbringing like, not only who were your primary caregivers and influences, but where you were being brought up, mixed with what were they modeling for you, how did they talk about themselves. And I've worked with many a parent who has shared, well, I never told them that, I just talked about myself that way.
Conscious mind. Yeah,
it's a sponge, and especially 0 to 5. And I have many parents write off, well, they were young. I'm like, no, those are the most impactful years of their life, when they're in utero as well. So like, we have to really be mindful of what we're putting ourselves, what we're ingesting content wise,
exactly.
food, everything.
It's like your diet. If you're eating McDonald's all day, you're
feel like crap.
It's like the content you are consuming.
Yes.
Whether it's food, whether it's words, like being, and it's, yes. Or just, around, they might live with, or they might work with some really toxic people. And it's like, you really need to create these boundaries for yourself and understand that, like, you cannot let these, you have to find a way to not let this get to you, because it really does affect your life and way beyond what you could ever imagine, honestly.
Yes, absolutely. Such a valid point to bring up. It does truly create your reality, and that is something people do have power over, even if you can't directly change an environment, or you must be in contact with a person for whatever reason. You still have 100% of the power of how you talk to yourself in your mind.
Absolutely. And I think this is actually a really good point about, like, when you're looking for a partner, say, and people who don't, especially if they're not sure what they're looking for, what I see a lot is people, even if you don't know what you want, I promise, I'm like, what is a personality trait what is the thing about people that you can't stand, that you fucking, right. People always know what they hate.
Yes.
So you're like, I hate drama. Like, I don't want drama, right? Mm-hmm. So if that's like the sentence in your mind, the thing is, another rule of the subconscious mind, and if anyone wants like a list of the rules, I'm happy to share them, because it's like, once you know these and understand them, like, your life will change. It's like really important. I don't know why this is not taught in like first grade, but anyway, basically, if you're saying, like, if you're basically putting out into the world, I don't want drama, the subconscious mind does not understand negative. So it'll hear,
here's drama.
And that is why, and this is back to what we were talking about a little earlier, of like, why do I keep attracting drama? It's because you are saying, I don't want drama. So you actually have to think about, instead of using that sentence, you actually need to make a totally different sentence with words that have a different energy to them. So it's like, what is the opposite of drama?
What do you actually want?
Right. Yeah. What do you actually want to attract into your life, not repel? So it's like, okay. So I want someone who, is really into open communication, can handle disagreement respectfully. Like, conflict is more of a discussion rather than is more of a discussion that's healthy and, respect. Right. Like, that is like, instead of, you just like get rid of the I don't want drama sentence. Because once you actually say that stuff, it will go out into the world. And once it really gets on that deeper level, you won't even have to think about it. It'll be on autopilot. So like, the conscious mind is when it's conscious that you have to actually think about it. But when it becomes an unconscious competence, it does the work for you. Mm-hmm. It's like having a personal assistant going out in the world and doing stuff for you. And the problem is, you did not train it. Your 4-year-old self gave it the training manual, basically. And so if you want to like upgrade, it's the training manual to like your mature adult self's desires or beliefs or understandings of the world. You have to actually first be conscious and intentional about it before the assistant can go off and do these things without you monitoring it.
Correct. And I think that's such a powerful explanation, because we often would not let a 4-year-old run this or do all these things. But internally, many of us are still operating on that, at that aged conscious belief, because we haven't done the work. We don't know it exists. We don't know the benefit of doing so, because that feedback loop that you're mentioning, we can't process the negative. This happens all the time in couple relationships. We parent based off
like, don't spill the glass.
Yeah, don't do this. Stop doing. So we just get told no, 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 no. Not only is that frustrating all day as a toddler and as a teenager growing up, it's not effective, and it's not actually teaching the child or adolescent or adult, for that matter, what is the instead, right? Okay, I stopped doing the thing. Where's my reward, right? I stopped texting on my phone, and I'm looking at you, and the parent's like, much better. I now feel good. And thank you for stopping it. And the kid's like, yeah, that's not benefiting me, right? There's no mutual benefit. And subconsciously, we can't process the negative. So we just feel wrong or bad. And we have this internalized sense of shame or guilt, for our whole lives, and we operate that way in adulthood. No wonder when we're in a romantic relationship and those wounds get pushed on, if we don't even know that they're there, boom, defensiveness, boom, a fight. Oh, I'm just going to pull the eject cord and leave before I'm left, or I'm never going to get close to you. We have all these defensive structures psychically that protect us from ever having to look at our subconscious mind or our shadow states. However, the quickest way through to your lightest self is to do so with typically somebody who can guide you through that. You can always read self-help books, of course, but I think it's helpful to have a guide to challenge those beliefs.
Especially one who can prompt you well with great questions. Because the thing is, everyone you meet is a mirror of you. Like the reason, like, and when you're on a date, a really good question to ask yourself after is, what version of myself does this person bring out? Like if you've been on 5 dates with them, you know, for example, you could be like, well, this person is like, I really like them, but they make me like way more anxious than usual. Like I'm not an anxious person, and suddenly I'm like this person who has anxiety when I'm around them. It's like, you can really like someone, but that doesn't mean you like who you are around them. And like actually thinking about like what version of myself does this person inspire out of me? How do I feel around this person?
Yes.
Is a really powerful question that I think people overlook and don't make that connection off. It's not so obvious if you think about it, because it's like, you know, if you really like them, it's hard to know that, unless it's like, I didn't know that until I heard that, and I was like, wow, that's deep. Right?
Yeah, I work with my clients on that as well, especially in the context of a couple relationship, asking themselves, who can I be and who can I not be? It not only like permission / allowance, like, does this person prevent me by their energy, their way of being? Do I not feel safe? Like there's more of that existential view of it, as well as what are my limiting beliefs, right? Who do I believe I can or cannot be? And if not, why? What is the fear? Why am I having these blocks? Why can't my full authentic self come out in the relationship? Sometimes it's a safety mechanism in your intuitive center that goes, this person is not for you, let's not indulge.
There are moments where like it genuinely, the person does not have the capacity to hold the space for you to like, you know, do that. And that is super important. But then on the side, as I'm sure you're about to explain, on
the flip side, there are times when that person is safe to do these things with, or they are not a threat, and your intuition is so cued to keep you safe that once you lower it, you go, okay, I can do this, right? This person is a safe person to tell the truth to. I can lean into this. We stop ourselves, right? Well, who can I not be? Because if I haven't accepted my full authentic self, if you ever catch a glimpse of it, you're going to abandon me, right? Or I'm going to feel engulfed if I don't have the ability to be independent. And if you see that in me, you're going to leave me, right? So there's so much nuance underneath the surface of the brain and the mind, or what we just see, that we would all benefit from doing a lot more inner work.
Exactly. And I think I have a really useful point, because this is something that I definitely, you know, if you say something like use your intuition, for people who are for people who that's like how they have learned to tap into, as opposed to some other method. Yeah. It's none of them are better than others. It's just like some people that's more like what they're used to. They're like, how the hell do I know if it's my intuition? Like, I think this is a very practical like thing to actually explain to people, is that, so your intuition, so that, you know, how do you know if it's like my ego getting in my way, or how do I know if it's intuition, like that voice or whatever, you know, vision or whatever it is telling you something? So, you know, say for example, you're afraid of flying, or I don't know, basically, you're afraid of flying, and I'm like, I want to use a better example, but I don't have one at the moment. So I'm just going to say what the takeaway is, and then maybe it works for me. So basically, intuition does not have panic. It's neutral. It's calm.
It's a knowledge.
It's the voice, vision, however, you know, if the sensation, whatever it is, if it's neutral, calm, not panicking, not like volatile, that's intuition. And if there's fear, if there's panic, if there's an emotional trigger, that's not your intuition.
Really good delineation.
So yeah, like, you know, say like there's, you know, something that could be really scary happening. Like, I don't know, you're a mom and like you're, you know, going to give birth soon, and you hear this like calm voice that's like, go to the hospital. That would be intuition. But if you have this like panic, like, oh my God, like everything's going to go wrong, even though everything's been fine the whole time, like that's not intuition.
Yes. And I think often if we ignore. I will say whatever you ignore, it usually becomes louder, like toddler on the pant leg, right? Mom, 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 mom,
Yes.
mom. What? My little angel, right? Versus obviously some parents snap in a different way, but it's like, oh, I just wanted to, right? We want attention. If we're attention maintained in our behavior, to study 4 functions of behavior and bring it back in, why are we doing what we're doing? If we want attention paid to us, we will do behaviors to get that paid. Same thing with your internal voice. So sometimes if you ignore your intuition for long enough, or you chalk it up to, oh, that's, you miscategorize whatever it might be, then it will become not emotionally like overwhelmingly louder, but you will start to see in your reality more and more evidence of, hey, I'm trying to talk to you. Hey, I'm trying to talk to you, right? It doesn't yell at you, but it gives you more frequency. It visits you more often, I would say.
Yes. And the thing is, like, things will start to happen in your life. And it's like, you basically don't wait until rock bottom to answer the goddamn door, please. Like, so this is definitely true to me. It's like, I now, learning the lesson of, you don't, a lot of people say like wisdom comes from suffering. And like, oftentimes that is how people start acquiring such things, for me, for sure. But it's like the day you actually learn, like, I can actually learn the lesson now, like really actually learn it, not just say I'm learning it, and prevent suffering, and like, in a way that is just, the magnitude is just so much worse, is like the ultimate life hack. It's not always hard, because it's like, sometimes people like wait until things really blow up to like do that. But if you can actually have that foresight and realize, like, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, and
So,
you can prevent a lot of unnecessary suffering in your life if you just take the lesson when it's given to you, and not
and
until
it,
rock bottom.
yeah, it can be difficult to do that. And it's also, regardless of the difficulty level, it's a necessity to move through life, to be able to honor. It's the story I'm telling myself about the pain that's perpetuating the suffering. I am doing this to myself. And I'm not saying, there's obviously exceptions to this. If somebody is causing you this problem, if they're inciting the issue, that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about very specifically in your own psyche. I'm bringing this upon myself by the story I'm continuing to tell, by how I'm continuing to move through the world, or by complaining, or making a complaint rather, that this is not fair, this is not right, this is not as I expected. Tough noogies, sometimes that is what is best for you. And if your kind of alignment is off, there's not a congruence with what's best for me and what feels good. And I think when you learn that not like truly aligned for you is going to feel great at all, or right off the bat. Sometimes
alignment can feel really challenging sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Growing into your authentic self, it's like, oh my, okay.
Sometimes you have to actually like admit some really hard things, like, wow, this partner or this best friend or this job or whatever it is out of alignment, and I have to let go of it. And that's really hard.
Yes, it is difficult to let go of things, especially when we are conditioned, or we've been looking forward to them, or they check just enough boxes, right? That we feel like, whew, especially if we've had a lot of shit to go through in our life, we just want some stability. And it's like, oh, thank God I got to the first peak of the mountain. Whew, okay. And then you look up and you're like, yeah, I think I'm good. I think we're good. We're right here. We're just going to stay here on this plane of the mountain, but you have to keep climbing to get to that authentic self. And it's okay to take a break. If you know that something's not a good fit and you need a little bit of time to make that reality congruent, the awareness is what's key, right? Even if you need a little bit more time to make action.
Yeah, that's actually a question, or that's an interesting point of like kind of discerning, when should I jump before I'm ready, basically, and when is it actually appropriate to wait and wait till I'm ready, basically.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And I think, I think it's more, honestly, it's a contextual thing, and it's a challenging question that I think is worth asking if you're in that situation of like, and maybe like mapping that out and kind of being like, if I did jump before I'm ready, like what are the, what's the best and worst thing that could happen, and like what's like the average thing that could happen, and then actually in doing that as well for the if I wait.
Yes. I think that's great advice to leave our viewers with. I want to do this with you again. I think we'll do part 2 and to infinity. Thank you so much for spending time chatting today. I loved this conversation. I'm hoping
Yes, it was so good.
Learned a lot, and it will live on my page. It's welcome to live on your page as well. We're happy to answer any comments. And I just want to say again, Tessa, thank you so, so much
Thank you.
for
Right?
this.
Amazing. And yeah, look forward to doing it again. This was so, so good. Have an amazing
Absolutely.
day.
I will send you the link. All right. Take care. Take care, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye. Have a good day.